Runway center 9 discipline. 70 knots. High 60s. Straighten the airplane out. So fly it onto the runway. Fly it onto the runway. Slight, ever so slight check forward. Fight the rudder. Stay on the center line. Stay on the center line. All right, welcome on board. Finally got a nice day in January, so take advantage of it. It's like +1 degree outside, which is unusual for Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan in January. Looks like we're going back to the deep freeze on Wednesday, -23 I think is the high, so let's take advantage of this. Go for a little rip and change the oil at the end of the day. Engine has about 50 hours on it now. Oil's due at 53 hours. So what we're going to do today is do some 3-point and wheel landings. I actually did a video on this once already, except I used the GoPro 360 camera, and for some reason Premiere Pro didn't like it when I tried to upload it. So today we're going to go with just the normal GoPro cameras. Film it again. The wind, we'll get the wind on the ATIS once we're airborne because it comes from Regina, which is about 45 minutes east of here. So we'll tune into their ATIS to get a altimeter setting and see what the wind is. But it's a slight left crosswind. Didn't want to do this video on like a super easy day, with zero wind. So today we'll see some probably dynamic landings, and we'll do some 3-pointers and some wheel landings. Obviously the difference is, for the 3-pointer, we're going to touch down, all 3 wheels at the same time. It's really the way that I prefer it when first learning on a new tail dragger. And that's probably what most people are taught when they're brand new to an airframe. Just a little bit easier to do. The speed isn't as critical as it is in a wheel landing, where we're just going to touch down the mains and then settle the tail wheel down later. So that's the main difference is for the 3-point landing. It probably is a little bit easier to do, and if you're new to an airplane or you got a gusty wind day, then that might probably be the landing that I usually resort to. Otherwise, I try and wheel land it, so we'll wheel land on the mains and then let the tail settle afterwards. It takes a little bit more finesse, a little bit more discipline on the airspeed control. But it is the better way to land a tail dragger. And what I find in these RVs actually is, on days where the wind is calm, I'm by myself, it's actually quite easy to land. So you can get a bit confident in landing these airplanes. And then you put a passenger in, put some bags in, turn up the wind, give a little bit of gust factor in there, and it can be quite challenging because the airplanes are light, and this airplane only weighs 1,000 pounds. So a little gust of wind can cause you to go airborne again. So we'll talk about it in the air, post run up. So let's run it up and get out of here. Here we go. Okay, so we're 5 miles away. We need to lose 1,000 feet still to get down to the pattern altitude. So what I find with these RVs actually is it can be challenging to slow them down. So you do have to plan ahead to get it back down to the flap speed and to the pattern speed. So depending on what you're used to flying, you may find with your RV that you're going to have to plan a little bit better as far as arriving at an airport. So we're doing 170 knots here, and we have to get down to 97 for the flaps. So at 5 miles, I would aim to be more around that 120 knot indicated. So there's our pattern altitude, 2 miles away, and decrease it through 145 knots. You find a constant speed prop is a little bit better for slowing down, since you got that flat plate in front of you when you pull the power back and push the prop forward, which we are now. So the fixed pitch prop, you might even have to plan a little bit more to get slowed down at the pattern altitude. Okay, so we're on top of the airfield, 2,900 feet is our pattern altitude. Got about 13 inches of manifold pressure, and we're decreasing through 110 knots. Moose Jaw, Victor Bravo X-ray, downwind right, 31, touch go Moose Jaw. Okay, 10 more knots to go before we can do half flap. Got 12 inches of manifold pressure in the turn. And we're quite wide on our first downwind here. So there's 97, half flap. And when I'm by myself in this airplane, end up with quite a bit nose up trim, almost full nose up trim. Well, it is full nose up trim as we come in. And 87 knots, full flap, more nose up trim. And now we're aiming for 80 knots around base. So we'll start with the 3-pointers. This is what I would use. Like I said, if I was a bumpy, gusty day, I have a passenger and bags. The COG of the aircraft is more aft than what I'm used to flying by myself. Or I'm just learning on my new tail dragger. Probably going to 3-point it. I don't do this often anymore in this airplane, so we'll see how it goes.
500.
Moose Jaw traffic, Victor Bravo, say final, 31, touch go, Moose Jaw. Alright, so we're fast. About 11 inches of manifold pressure coming around the corner here, slowing down to 80. And then 75 knots on final. Slowing to 70 knots and crossing the threshold in the high 60s. So wind is going to be from the left. There's 75. Left wing low, right rudder, aligned with the runway, 75 knots. So we know the attitude of the airplane when we're taxiing, and the cowling is sitting right on the horizon. So as we come into the flare, we're going to put the cowling on the horizon and just hold the airplane there so all 3 wheels touch at the same time. Now we'll start to slow it down a little bit more for the 3-point landing. Now we'll start bringing the cowling onto the horizon, bring the power to idle. And that's how we 3-point land it, like that. So quite a bit slower than a wheel landing. So we wasted a bit of runway on that one, so we didn't exactly land at the threshold. So I could pull the power back a little bit sooner, get slowed down a little bit more, get that cowling on the horizon sooner, or whatever the reference you use for your 3-point attitude, just by looking outside as you taxi the airplane out. Now I'll show you the difference on the wheel landing. So this one we're going to bring it in a little bit faster. So we're aiming for that kind of high 60s on over the threshold. Whereas for the 3-point landing, you know, we were at 65, just under that as we come over the threshold, and just holding that 3-point attitude. The start traffic, Victor Roxbury is down right, 31, touch go, West John. So nothing changes on base and final. We're going to do 80 knots around the corner, slowing to 75. And then a short final, we're going to aim for 70 knots, just bleeding into those high 60s. So we're going to have a little bit more airspeed than when we do the 3-point landing. And that's going to enable us to stick the mains down and just ever so slightly have that slight forward pressure on the stick after that to stay on the mains and keep the tail wheel off the ground. So it's a little bit more finessing in this one, but it takes a bit more practice. Runway is stationary in the windshield. We're not getting below the glide slope, we're not getting above the glide slope. Runway is staying right there. The numbers are staying in the same spot in the windshield the whole time. Alright, now we'll slow to 70. We're going to land this one a little bit faster. It's going to be the mains only, and we're going to keep the tail off the ground. There's 70 knots. Now we're looking for the high 60s over the threshold. And we'll fly it onto the runway. Stick the mains down, keep the tail wheel off, keep the airplane nice and straight with the rudder. And we'll go around for another one. So it's not exactly an easy day. A little bit of gusty wind from the west. But hopefully you guys can see the difference there. We'll go around for another 3-pointer, just talk through that one again. Start traffic, Victor Bravo X-ray is final, 31, touch go, West John. We're a little bit high on this one. It's quite a bit of right rudder here. I don't know if the wind is picking up a little bit. Quite a bit of right rudder to stay aligned with the runway. 70 knots. Now we're going to bring the power to idle. We're going to put the cowling on the horizon. And all 3 wheels touch at the same time. Alright, so now we'll go for the wheel landing, 97 knots, half flap.
Waiver traffic, Gulf Wind to Tango is turning left downwind, runway 30 wavering. Touch and go.
Yeah, the wind's definitely picking up out of the west here. It's quite a boot of right rudder now. Very precise airspeed control. Fly it onto the runway. Mains touch. Keep the tail wheel off, nice and centered. Be active with the rudder. Keep it nice and centered. Centerline discipline. Big deal in a tail dragger airplane. Centerline discipline. Alright, let's go around for the 3-pointer. Always finesse these a little bit more. And as you get more confident, you know, you start bringing in the pattern. Start doing it a little bit tighter. We're doing like 1.5 mile finals today just so we can talk a little bit more. Alright, remind ourselves what kind of landing we want to do. It's going to be the 3-pointer. We'll slow to 75 on final. 70 short at final, and then we're looking for about that 65 knot over the threshold. Flaring 1 or 2 feet above the runway, putting the cowling on the horizon, pulling the power to idle, and just holding it there. Centerline discipline the whole time. Runway centerline discipline. T in a tail dragger. Coming over the end of the runway, slowing down, 65. Bringing the power to idle. Centerline discipline, cowling on the horizon. Little bobble there, and all three wheels land at the same time. Victor Bravo X-ray down right, 31 stops, John. Wind from the left. Left wing low, right rudder. Buddha, right rudder. Runway center 9 discipline. 70 knots. High 60s. Straighten the airplane out. Oh, fly it onto the runway. Fly it onto the runway. Slight, ever so slight check forward. Fight the rudder. Stay on the center line. Stay on the center line.